Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host 𝗟𝗯𝗲𝗀. Today I have, after a brief hiatus, Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma from across the pond. Not really, I'm not in US right now, but you get the idea. Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma ji joins me to talk about something that is happening right now in the United Kingdom on the unfortunate episode of what happened in India. To know all about this and the background and the reason we're going to have this hangout, Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma ji will walk us along what is happening, what happened in India, and then what the reaction in the United Kingdom is. You know about toolkits. Is this another toolkit being played out? We don't know that. But Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma ji will set me straight, I'm sure. Pandit ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Sriji, pranam, namaskar ji, Jai Shri Ram, and Om 𝗟𝗯𝗲𝗀𝗃 𝗛. It's wonderful to be with you. I do apologize for the absence over the last few weeks or a month or two. Things have been very, very active here in the UK. We have a lot to catch up on. It is unfortunate that the catalyst for our conversation today are the events of the 𝗟𝗯𝗲𝗀 𝗀. And I think before we go into the detail, I'd just like to share with you, as you know, I was born in Punjab. And so I am a Punjabi. Our family, we have 14 generations, almost 400 years of having been in Punjab, and it's deeply, deeply a part of who we are. And the Hindu-Sikh issue, as it's called these days, is a new manifestation. My grandfather raised the funds and planted the foundation stone for the Gurdwara in our village, and he did the same for the mandir in our village, and members of both communities were completely without any division whatsoever. So we have a history of being very close to each other. And so it's doubly, triply tragic to learn of what had happened in Bharat. And it's something that's taken us quite a bit of time to understand. So before we continue with that, I'd just like to extend condolences from the Hindu community here in the United Kingdom to the family of the young man. We still don't know who he is. We don't know who the family was. But I'd like to extend condolences because in the midst of all this tragedy, in the midst of all this political conversation, I'm very much aware that there is a family who have lost a son. It may well turn out that there are children who've lost a father, siblings who've lost a brother. And that's the real tragedy at the heart of this. So we really must extend best wishes and condolences to them and hope that they find the strength to navigate this with dignity and without undue pressure or criticism. The real tragedy is that this young man has lost his life. Everything else is of a secondary place. So having said that, what I'd like to do is to turn to the situation and its ramifications here in the United Kingdom. And as you have known and as you will have seen from the tweets, we had a very strange impact of the event in Punjab, here in the United Kingdom, in that one of our prominent politicians, a lady called Preet Gill, she immediately tweeted, and her tweet was an extremely offensive tweet. In essence, she had tweeted that this was a Hindu terrorist act, that the intention of the individual was to cause harm to the Sikhs within the holy shrine of the Golden Temple. And it was tweeted pretty much immediately, and we were in shock. The first reaction was, why is it a Hindu terrorist? As you can imagine, we were all curious. The second reaction was, well, maybe she's received information, being a government minister or a senior parliamentary member. Maybe she's received some information and she is confirming this. But the tweet, its impact was immediately to set the communities on edge. And it was quite a sad moment, shall we say, because we have worked for such a long time in this country to bring communities together, to work together for the betterment of everybody. And for such a tweet so divisive to have been tweeted, it caused us all to think about the possible ramifications and to start to put in place mechanisms to try and smooth over any complications that would arise from this. Doubly tragic is that there are 3 generations of effort that have gone in to get our Hindus, Sikhs, people of Indian origin, into places where they can contribute an Indian and dharmic perspective into policy making. I recall when Preet Gill became an MP, all of us, we thought, wonderful, we have a Punjabi girl who's now in Parliament, and the whole community was patting itself on the back. We have an Indian who is able to give an Indian voice in Parliament. And so we all started off with a great deal of hope and a great deal of support for all of the Indian origin parliamentarians. But I must say that as time has progressed, we have seen so many little incidents which lead us to consider whether Preet Gill is actually of benefit to our community, whether she is competent, whether she is mature, wise, serious, or whether perhaps she needs to spend a bit more time on the back benches and become more mature. So these are now questions that we're asking.
So first thing that comes to my mind, Satish ji, is that right now she's a front bencher and she is a shadow minister. Can you talk a little bit about this system of shadow ministers, sir, for our viewers?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. Thank you for reminding me that that's something to be covered. So if you imagine the government is the political party which is in office and in power. They make policy, they make decisions. The opposition has a mirror set up. And so for each minister who is in government, we have a shadow minister who is a member of the opposition. And so in the debating chamber of the House of Commons, the people who sit on the front bench are the people who articulate the policy position of the party. And so if a Conservative minister wants to articulate what the government's position is, they will do so from the front benches. And if the opposition wants to challenge a particular policy point and to declare the opposition party's position, they will do so from the front benches. So the front benches are really the ministers, shadow ministers, according to which party they're with. So she is a shadow minister. So she is the international development shadow minister. So she sits on the front benches, and strictly speaking, everything that she says can be assumed to be Labour Party policy. That is the function of ministers. Ministers are required to project and to communicate and to articulate the policy positions of their parties. So she is a very senior person in Parliament, shadow minister for international development. As you can imagine, the international development angle is also a very prominent and high-profile position, interacting with people of all nations, races, colors, religions, etc. So it's a very senior position that she holds, and rightly, she should be held to a very, very high standard, appropriate with the position she holds.
So this position carries more responsibility. And I think I want to step back a little bit, Panditji. Is this the first time she has said something like this or done something like this? Or is there a bit of a past history to her actions that kind of makes it like, oh, this is becoming a pattern?
There is. It's, as I say, there's a little bit of a history that we have observed over the last few years, especially since she has risen to shadow ministerial heights. Naturally, it's a position of higher prominence. And so much of what she says is monitored by many, many people, and it influences an awful lot of people. And I did a little bit of research, and she certainly seems to be, shall we say, overly passionate and perhaps occasionally shoots from the hip. You may be aware that in Parliament we have another very prominent member of the Sikh community, respected Lord Singh. He is a senior member of the House of Lords, and he has sat on many, many committees. He is, in fact, you probably recall, you and I, we did a session on Lord Singh.
Yes, we did. BBC, yes.
That's the one, his departure from the BBC on a point of principle, because they wouldn't let him speak openly about 𝗟R𝗯𝗏 𝗏. And he took that as an offence, as he quite rightly should have done so. And after 35 years of speaking on the BBC, he left. And that was an act of principle, and we gave him a huge amount of respect for being true to his principles. So he's a very prominent and high-ranking member of the government. She has attacked him on a number of occasions. In fact, she submitted complaints to the Commissioner for Standards, alleging all sorts of things. And as you can see from the report on the parliamentary website, the Commissioner for Standards dismissed the claims as having been without any bearing whatsoever. One of the other interesting things that Preet Gill is associated with is there was an attempt, a campaign almost, a very high-profile campaign, where it was put forward that the members of the British Sikh community wanted to have an ethnicity box for Sikh, i.e. that being a Sikh was actually a member of, was a dimension of ethnic origin. It was to do with ethnicity. And I'm sure that most people will just scratch their heads and think, well, hang on a moment, if a white person becomes a Sikh, his ethnicity doesn't change. Ethnicity has nothing to do with one's belief system or religion and ideology. And yet she was one of the very prominent people who were pushing this all the way through to try and, she was supporting this, trying to get this change to happen. And she has been very, very close to an organization called the Sikh Federation. And the Sikh Federation, I'm sorry to say, is one of those groups who openly declare that they are, maybe bear with me a moment, that they are wanting to see a separate state in India. But here you will see the sort of tweets that I've been able to just find. So she's referring to Lord Singh, and in this tweet she again says that Lord Singh is a bully and a misogynist. The director she's referring to is the director of the there's a charity which represents Sikhs, the the National Organization for Sikhs, I think it is. The name eludes me for the moment. But she's referring to him, the director, Lord Singh, as being a bully. And it's quite interesting here, a young lady called Sarah, who's a lawyer, she reminds her that's not appropriate, and does tell her that accusing somebody of misogyny is accusing them of a hate crime. So this is not this is really not the sort of thing that we expect from a shadow minister. There are other elements as well which have caused us to have a little bit of concern. But my real concern is that in this country, we work very, very hard to try and maintain very good movement and understanding communication relationships with all of the communities. And the Hindu and the Sikh community has always been very close, and we want it to remain that close, supporting each other. But these various points that I've just raised, they have caused divisions. When the issue about the ethnicity tick box was raised, the group who were putting themselves forward as representatives were far from representative, and the Sikh community was divided by this campaign of theirs. It wasn't supported by the majority Sikh community, and yet she was also associated and pursued it. So I think we have enough evidence to be able to put forward the notion that our dear Preet Gill is not acting with her highest priority being community cohesion and being excellent relations between everybody. And this is, sadly, this is something that's also part of the profile now of the Labour Party. You know, we've had many conversations where the Labour Party has behaved in a manner which is undeniably Hindu-phobic, anti-India. We recall many conversations you and I have had about their conference speeches and the vitriol that various members have poured onto Indians, and especially the BJP and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, without evidence. And so when we look at this now, what we're seeing is that we have a shadow minister who is making remarks which are clearly designed to create a rift and to cause friction between the Hindu and Sikh community in this country. Those remarks are incendiary, and I would go as far as to say that by her calling them Hindu terrorists at the time that she did, it's a wolf whistle, isn't it? It's a dog whistle to people to say, right, here's another reason to hate Hindus and to spark off a conflict. You can imagine, had she tweeted Muslim terrorist after the Manchester bombing, where many, many British citizens were injured and killed, there would have been a furore, there would have been uproar. Had she tweeted Muslim terrorist after the London Bridge terror attack, or the attacks in London where the bus was blown up, there would have been an absolute outrage, and I'm fairly sure the Labour Party would have at least censored her, and if nothing else, maybe even have removed her from her position of primacy. Personally, I think if the Labour Party are genuine and authentic in their desire to have good relationships with the British Hindu community and the wider Indian community, and with India as well, they really do need to demonstrate, not just by empty, shallow words, but by an act, a disciplinary act, and show that they are actually true. Otherwise, I think they're opening themselves, exposing themselves to allegations and indeed actions against them for rampant Hindu phobia, hatred of Hindus.
Satishji, I just want to take you back to the time when James Corbyn quit. And at the time that he was at the helm, the Labour Party had violently moved towards the left. I'm not saying physically, but I'm just saying that vehemently they were taking a left. And it was Keir Starmer, I thought, who was trying to bring them back more towards the center. How's that effort coming along?
Well, Keir Starmer has made a lot of noise. When he appeared on the scene, there were exchanges between the various Hindu organizations and his office, and gestures and remarks were made that this was an issue that would be resolved. Your viewers may have recollected from a past conversation that we had that I actually spoke at the Labour Party conference earlier this year and had an opportunity to address some other shadow ministers and some activists. I spoke and had an engagement with Steve Reed, who's the shadow minister for communities and local government, and they openly acknowledged that there was work to be done, that in the past the British Labour Party had really fallen short in its obligations to the British Hindu community. And so all the right noises have been made. And so this is now a wonderful opportunity for them to actually do something. Let us see what they actually do, because this is a case, it's a very specific case, it's clear, it's undisputable. And we know what a powder keg that situation in Punjab could be with an incident like this. And for a British minister to tweet something like that is pouring fuel onto an already potentially incendiary situation. And if they don't recognize that that is a very serious issue and act accordingly, then I don't think that their remarks about wanting to be closer to the British Hindu community and the Indian community, I don't think those remarks bear any, they have no credibility, and there is no substance to them. So let's see. I'm fairly confident that the conversation we're having, the reports and the emails that other people are sending to Keir Starmer, to Steve Reed, to Anne Black, and other members of the National Executive, the Labour Party's NEC, they will be aware of the feeling and the understanding. So there is no reason for them not to act, other than perhaps just to confirm that everything so far has been lip service.
And for our viewers' benefit, I'd like to reiterate, since Preet Gill and Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma and we're all born in India. I'm assuming that Preet Gill is born in India, but even if not, her ancestors were born in India. The Constitution of India in 1950 defines Hindu as someone who is born in India, but is not a Muslim, a Christian, a Parsi, or a Jew. I hope that makes it clear, because the Constitution is 70 plus years old. And hopefully that sort of serves as a yardstick for people to decide which ethnicity they belong to. Let's not divide ourselves furthermore. I mean, there are bigger problems to tackle. There's still a COVID rampaging around the country. And thank you very much, Panditji. If you would like to add something in the end, please feel free.
No, I do. Thank you for those words and the clarification about the constitutional dimension to this. But I would just like to reiterate that at this moment in time, there are groups who are seeking to derive benefit by causing chaos. And there is no simpler chaotic formula, shall we say, that can be deployed quickly than religious intolerance. You know, we saw a young man with a young family lynched in Pakistan, in Sialkot, only a short couple of weeks ago. And that was a mob who were incited with this thing called religious radicalism. And when I observe the hatred that was, shall we say, consuming that mob, I see no difference between that hatred and the hatred which led to the death of this young man in Amritsar only a short few weeks later. There is no difference between the two, and people of wisdom should really understand. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said that anger and hatred is like holding a coal, a burning coal in your own hand, that it harms you as much as it harms any person who you're directing your hatred towards. And wise people on all sides really should step forward and understand that at the end of all of this, once the anger and hatred have passed, the only thing that's left are ashes. And there is nothing left. Nobody emerges from this without having been burned. So we really do need wiser heads to step forward, cooler heads to step into the space, and to start to think about how we are going to build a better future for all the children at this moment of all of our communities at this moment in time. And there is no justification whatsoever in the dharmic scriptures for the actions that happened outside of the main darbar. You know, when I often wonder, when I'm thinking about my own actions, you know, I often ask myself, if our gurus were standing next to me, what would they think about the words that I'm saying and the actions that I'm doing? And I can't help but feel that had they been present observing what happened in Amritsar, they would all have felt deeply, deeply, deeply shamed, and very, very hurt by what had happened. You know, the loss of life over something like an idea and a belief, it's just anathema. It is contrary to all of the values that we have in our dharmic traditions. You know, we place human form on the highest pedestal. How many times have we heard people say that after 84,000 births, a jivatma acquires a human form? This is how valuable it is. This is the labor that a person goes through in order to become a human. And so for that work and for that toil of many, many lives to just be extinguished in a moment of supposedly defending the honor of an idea, especially in a way which was completely the opposite to the way expressed by the gurus, it's just a terrible development. You know, I can't help but asking myself, what happened to 𝗟R𝗯𝗲𝗀𝗃? You know, the Punjabi reputation, and especially the authentic Sikh reputation, has been so tarnished by this. The world is looking at the two, Sialkot and Amritsar, with the same eyes now. And I think we really do need to do some serious work to move forward from this, make sure justice is seen to be carried out. And let's really hope that the older, wiser, cooler heads step forward to give better guidance than perhaps they have been doing so far.
Thank you very much, Panditji, and we'll be back again with more conversations with Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma ji. Namaskar.
Pranam ji, namaskar, Jai Shri Ram, and Om Guru Bhyo Namaha. Thank you very much, Sri. Speak soon.